My ex-wife completely severed ties with me, removing me from all her social media accounts. But guess what? She didn't stop there. Just when I thought she was finally out of my life, the inevitable occurred. I only recognized my wife's true nature after losing my job for the last time. In the past, I held a high-ranking position in a large corporation, accompanied by numerous benefits and a hefty paycheck. This allowed my wife, with whom I'd been married for 4 years, to be financially free as I took care of her. She excelled at managing the household and looking after me and my elderly mom. Opting to have my mom live with us instead of a nursing home caused a rift with my siblings, who failed to appreciate our mom's contributions to our current status. Now that she's old, blind, and in need of care, they wanted to place her in a home and forget about her. I couldn't allow that, so I brought her to live with us. To my knowledge, my wife and mom got along well, and any issues between them were unknown to me. If my wife had communicated her unhappiness with certain aspects of her life, I would have done anything to make her feel better. Supporting her when she quit her job due to dissatisfaction was not an issue. Financially, I never faced significant challenges, always able to provide for my loved ones and lead a comfortable life. Therefore, it was a shock when I was accused of stealing money at work. Despite my dubious colleague being the boss's nephew, they made me the fall guy, and I was let go. Though it didn't mar my record and I received some severance pay, I found myself jobless. Eventually, I found another job, but it was a significant step down from my previous position. Consequently, my wife, not fond of working, suggested trying her hand at modeling at the age of 32 due to her youthful appearance. I didn't object, respecting her decision, and attended her photo shoots when possible. We hired a nurse to care for my mom around the clock, and this arrangement seemed effective until I stumbled upon those cufflinks while searching for my tie. Enid was out on a shoot, and not wanting to disturb her, I searched on my own and found a large box. I thought my tie might be in there among her belongings, but then I noticed a pair of cufflinks from a high-end brand beyond my budget. With no brothers, it raised questions as to why she possessed such pricey cufflinks. Though unsettled, I assumed there must be a logical explanation, and she wasn't being unfaithful. When she returned, I inquired about the cufflinks. She burst into laughter, explaining they were a gift for me that she had forgotten to give. They were given to her at a photo shoot to pass on to her husband or a friend. Feeling foolish for doubting her, my mom cautioned me to be cautious. She noted my wife's misconception that she couldn't hear due to being blind. Despite my wife misleading me about her whereabouts during claimed photo shoots and using my car because it suited her image better and I saw no damage, I decided to install a tracker in my car. Not once did my wife go anywhere near the locations she claimed to be visiting, yet she still managed to come home with money she supposedly earned. But she continued frequenting a specific address, more than just once or twice. Upon researching the address, it turned out to be that of a photographer. I enlisted my 20-year-old cousin to gather more information about this photographer. Upon seeing his photos, she recognized him, mentioning his popularity among her friends for creating content. Feeling like I was spiraling out of control, I learned from my cousin about the nature of the content he produced. We had agreed that her modeling would remain dignified, so why was she involved in this? Were her other photo shoots just a cover for something else? I knew that kind of content could bring in money, but we weren't desperate. I decided to confront the photographer and demand he cease working with her. She hadn't been honest with me, and I felt she hadn't considered the impact on our family. She could have at least been upfront about what she was doing. So I went to meet the photographer. I told him about my wife and asked him to stop shooting her. His name was Raphael, and his studio was quite impressive. His work seemed tasteful, but I didn't let that sway me. Raphael didn't seem bothered by my accusations. He told me that while he did shoot that kind of content, my wife only did hand modeling and small campaigns with him. He then showed me a portfolio of her work, and I felt like a fool. I apologized for my false accusations and made my exit. But before I left, I had a strange sense of familiarity. I asked Raphael to keep our conversation from Enid, and he agreed. He said he often dealt with concerned husbands, so he understood where I was coming from. The man who escorted me out seemed familiar. Something about the studio, or maybe him, gave me a sense of déjà vu. I brushed it off as nothing. 3 days later, my wife was in a hurry to get to work and left her bag in our room. I quickly grabbed it and ran outside to catch her before she drove off. I managed to hand her the bag just in time, but when I returned to the house, I stepped on something in the driveway. I picked it up and saw that it was a positive pregnancy test. I was ecstatic. At last, we were going to be parents. I dashed inside to share the exciting news with my mother, but asked her to keep it under wraps since my wife hadn't officially shared the news with me yet. It all made sense now, her recent mood swings and the distance she'd been keeping. I felt guilty for having doubted her and decided to make it up to her by cooking dinner. I must say, I'm quite the chef thanks to my mother's teachings. I texted her to ask when she'd be home, but my message bounced back. I checked our Wi-Fi connection, but it was working fine. Then I noticed her profile picture was missing. I tried calling her, but her number was unreachable. All her social media accounts were deactivated, and I started to worry, especially considering her delicate condition. This wasn't the first time she'd blocked me. The smallest things could set her off, leading her to deactivate her social media accounts until she felt better. On such days, she'd usually retreat to her mother's house for some rest. I'm not at liberty to disclose her exact diagnosis, but she has a personality disorder. She's managed it well over the years, but some days are tougher than others. So, as usual, I did what I do in such situations. I checked to see if she'd made it to her mom's house. Her mother reassured me that she was okay, just needing some space. I felt a mix of emotions, joy from the pregnancy news, but also a hollow feeling because she wasn't there with me. Perhaps she was having doubts about the baby and didn't want me to find out. I finally went upstairs that day and was met with stark emptiness. Her mirror, her jewelry box, all gone. Her closet was bare, not a single piece of clothing left behind. I asked my mom's nurse if she knew anything, and that's when she handed me a letter. It was from her. I read it. "Dear John, I love you, but I can't stay. I feel trapped. I need to breathe. This life isn't for me. Don't try to find me. Pretend I no longer exist. I just can't do this anymore. Goodbye." I asked the nurse to leave, and then I hit the wall so hard my knuckles started to bleed. She had vanished without a trace, carrying my unborn child. A few days later, I heard that Raphael had skipped town and run off with a woman. This made me question whether the baby was even mine. The worst part? I'll never know. Now, I'm left in this house that feels more hollow with each passing day. My mom passed away a few months back, and before she left, she assured me that time would mend my wounds. But it's been half a year since she disappeared. She ghosted me and hasn't reached out since. My routine is simple. Go to work, come home, and drink until I black out. I don't think I'm in lover of drinks, but I do think I'm battling depression. I feel utterly alone in this world. She's out there, probably happy. I still can't figure out what I did to make her cheat on me. I grapple with these questions daily. Sometimes I feel like I should disregard her wishes, track her down, and demand closure. I want her to face me and tell me it's over, not through some impersonal letter. Man, I feel so low. I guess I'm sharing all this so that someone, anyone, can understand what I'm going through. I haven't confided in any friends or family because I'm afraid of appearing weak. So, I put on a brave face and they don't ask any questions. I need to know, is there a way, any way, I can move forward? I'm just so exhausted. I don't know what to do. Update. After pouring out my heart, I found myself sleeping more peacefully that night. The following morning, I felt a sense of relief. I began to clean the house, discarding her belongings once and for all. In the subsequent week, I even managed to go golfing with a friend. Over these 2 months, I took small steps to reclaim my life. I also started attending weekly therapy sessions, which made me realize that I might have been dealing with a narcissist. I won't delve into the early stages of our relationship, but there were numerous red flags that I overlooked simply because I didn't want to lose her. This made me question, did my love for her morph into an obsession? I've been undertaking the most challenging task a person can do, having brutally honest conversations with myself. Through this, I've gradually started to let positivity seep back into my life. I genuinely believe that I'll be okay someday. It's gradually fading away. I believe I can do it. Update. Numerous positive changes have occurred in my life since then. I ceased dwelling on her and the pain she caused, gradually finding my way back to life. Job performance improvements led to a transfer and even a promotion. I now reside in a serene, small, and comfortable area, perfect for me and my fiancé. Yes, you heard right, My marriage to Enid ended over a year ago. Fortunately, I didn't lose anything to her, and we both moved on. It's been more than a year and a half since I last saw her, and I'm convinced the child she carried wasn't mine. Why else would she run off with a photographer? Regardless, I've forgiven her. Not because she deserves it, but because I'm a decent person. Now, about my fiancée. I met her when she was involved in a roadside accident. The person who hit her car fled the scene, and she was running late for a meeting. I managed to memorize the license plate of the hit-and-run car. I have an excellent memory, by the way. I approached her and blurted out the license plate number before even saying hello. She gave me a bewildered look and was about to call for help when I explained that it was the license plate of the car that hit her and took off. She was incredibly grateful for my help. I stuck around while she dealt with the police and all the necessary procedures. I'm not sure what compelled me to stay and ensure she was all right. Afterwards, she invited me for a coffee and, well, the rest is history. I'm brimming with happiness these days. My mom was right. Time does indeed heal. I feel rejuvenated and haven't fallen back into my old habits for a long time. My fiancé and I are expecting a baby soon, and we're organizing a cozy wedding with our close friends and family. I'm thriving in my job and have made significant progress over the past year. The only issue is that I've been having dreams about Enid. Sometimes, when I'm out, I think I catch a fleeting glimpse of her, which unnerves me. It's like I'm haunted by a specter. The dreams about her are far from pleasant. But I know better than to seek her out. She made her choice when she left me grappling with unanswered questions. She didn't even express her condolences when my mother passed away. I've worked tirelessly for everything I have. Honestly, I don't want or need her in my life. But how can I stop these dreams? I'm considering getting some sleeping pills. When I take sleeping pills, my dreams tend to fade away. I discussed this with my close friend, Peter, and he suggested that dreaming about an ex might indicate some unresolved issues. But does that mean I need to track her down to figure out what's left unsettled? I'm content. I told Peter I don't need her barging into my life and wreaking havoc as she's known to do. I didn't reach this point of peace easily. Update. She's reappeared, and you won't believe what she's claiming. I didn't seek her out. She tracked me down. Despite changing my phone number, job, and address, she managed to find me like some sort of detective. She sent me a text asking to meet, not even 2 weeks after I started having dreams about her. I had nothing to say to her, so I blocked her. She kept calling from different numbers, and my fiancée, Claire, started getting suspicious about the influx of calls. I had to fib and tell her that I'd accidentally signed up for a telemarketing service. I felt guilty when Claire decided to change her phone the very next day, just to give me some peace. Peter suggested that perhaps I should share the full story with her, not just the condensed version. Did I heed his advice? No, I rarely do. I should have, because Enid showed up at Claire's workplace with a kid, claiming he's mine. I was at work contemplating getting a restraining order against Enid when, lo and behold, she makes her move. Claire called me, saying a woman claiming to be my wife had shown up with a young boy, allegedly my son. Talk about impeccable timing to wreak havoc in my life once again, right? I had grieved for her and that child, mentally buried them, and now they just saunter back into my life as if nothing happened. I told Claire we'd discuss it later, then shot a text to Enid asking if she'd lost her mind. I warned her to steer clear of my fiancé. She responded saying she'd been trying to get my attention, but I'd been ignoring her. Did she really think she could just stroll back into my life and I'd welcome her with open arms? No questions asked? I was trembling. I had no idea if the child was mine. I'm still grappling with all this. Eventually, I mustered the courage to tell her we should meet and talk it out. The next day, when I got home, Claire was livid, and rightly so. She demanded to know why I hadn't told her about having a child and why I was still married to Enid. But I'm not married to her. I have no clue what she's talking about. I had no choice but to spill the beans, delve into the nitty-gritty of what transpired, and beg for her forgiveness. Claire forgave me, assuring me she'd stick by my side no matter what. I don't deserve such unwavering loyalty. I'm truly blessed to have her in my life. The following morning, I met with Enid. Claire stayed in the car while I had a chat with Enid. Seeing her for the first time in a year and a half was a jolt to my system. She's changed so drastically, it's hard to recognize her. She used to be vibrant, energetic, and passionate, but the woman standing before me looked a decade older. She reeked of cigarettes and had put on quite a bit of weight. Beside her was a young boy with wide eyes and a skinny frame. I sat down without saying a word to her and ordered something. Then I greeted her. She immediately burst into tears. Suddenly she broke down, expressing relief that I seemed to be doing well, better than she was. After she left me, she continued modeling for Raphael until her pregnancy started showing. She had no choice but to tell him she was expecting, but he wanted her to terminate the pregnancy. She refused, and he left her. From that point on, her life spiraled downwards rapidly, and she struggled to care for the baby. Then she dropped the bombshell. She wanted to get back together. Just me, her, and our supposed son. Hold on a minute. Did I have gullible tattooed on my forehead? I told her I had moved on and had no interest in rekindling our relationship. Then she pulled out all the stops, resorting to manipulation tactics like crying and blaming her mental health for her actions. I knew she believed she still had some sway over me, the kind she once had, but not anymore. Being with her was mentally exhausting. No matter how hard I tried to make her happy, it was never enough. She left me in shambles, and now she wanted to finish what she started. I told her I didn't want her back, but we still needed to conduct a DNA test on the boy. Who knows? It could be another one of her schemes to worm her way back into my life and wreak havoc. The boy looked so innocent and bewildered, a picture of sadness and confusion as he gazed up at me. I had to avert my gaze because the guilt was overwhelming. She knew this would get to me. She knew how much I yearned for a child. I rose from my seat, unable to endure this any longer. It was like reliving the darkest moments of my life, just sitting there. Then she threatened me, saying if I dared to leave, she'd ensure I'd never see my son again. I froze. I couldn't face her or anyone else. I was trembling, a cocktail of anger, fear, and a myriad of other emotions coursing through me. Then, a comforting hand rested on my shoulder, and I saw it was Claire. She reassured me that everything would be all right. She took a seat and asked Enid what she wanted. Enid demanded money, a hefty sum for child support. Claire responded, "All right, but we'll need a DNA test first to confirm that he's indeed Ian's son." Enid told her to stay out of it, calling her sloppy seconds. Claire retorted that at least she genuinely loved me and hadn't caused me any pain. Before I could react, Enid lunged at Claire, slamming her head onto the table. She was about to cross over to the other side to finish her off, but I intervened. She started yelling and tried to attack me. I yelled at Claire to call for help. Enid's reckless actions landed her a few hours behind bars for assault, thanks to the security camera footage. In the meantime, the child was placed in foster care, but I managed to secure a court order for a DNA test. The results are due in a few days, and I'm honestly at a loss for how to feel. Claire assures me that regardless of the outcome, she'll continue to love me and accept the child. The thought of having a lifelong connection to Enid through this child is daunting. It feels like she'll always be there, looming over me like a dark cloud no matter where I go. I don't harbor any love for her anymore. I see her for the manipulative person she truly is, and it scares me, for the sake of my wife and our unborn child. Enid always seems to have a trick up her sleeve, capable of causing havoc and escaping unscathed. So now, I need to plan for the future, to ensure our safety. Update. It's not over yet. We're about to receive the DNA results, so I'll read them out to you like a daytime talk show host. He is not the father. The child isn't mine. I was at a loss for words when I found out, even though it confirmed my suspicions. The child was probably Raphael's, who had promptly abandoned Enid upon learning of her pregnancy. My heart ached at the thought of her being solely responsible for that child's upbringing. So, Claire and I proceeded with our assault and stalking charges against her. It wasn't difficult for the court to determine that she wasn't fit for full custody of the child. Her past was riddled with questionable activities, and it was finally catching up with her. The court conducted a thorough evaluation and concluded that she needed professional help, as she posed a risk to herself and others. I felt a deep sense of pity for the innocent boy Bryce. Despite my initial inclination to distance myself, I felt compelled to ensure his biological father at least acknowledged him. Claire and I reached out to his father, hoping he would agree to meet his son. Let's hope he responds. Update. He didn't respond. In the weeks following our message, we stayed in touch with Bryce, ensuring he was in a safe environment. I often find myself wondering if she hadn't run away. Would I have raised Bryce as my own? Would I have ever met Claire? Or would she have eventually left me for a new lover? I've attempted to decipher Enid's thought process countless times, but even now, I'm still in the dark. 7 years ago, that enigma was part of her allure. I should have seen the red flags, but in a strange way, that perilous journey led me to Claire. My wife, Claire, and I recently tied the knot, and we're waiting for our baby to arrive before embarking on our honeymoon. It feels like we've been given a fresh start, and these past few weeks have been a honeymoon in their own right. However, our bliss has been overshadowed by responses from Raphael. His reaction was far from what I anticipated. I was bracing for anger, silence, or even acceptance. Instead, Raphael flatly denied being the child's father. He claimed to have undergone a vasectomy at the age of 20. Unless there's some medical marvel at play, he couldn't possibly be the father. His denial left me speechless, and I found myself wondering who else could be the child's father. I scoured his social media, going back as far as a year. I looked for posts where Enid was present and tried to identify any men she was associated with during that time. Then I froze. There was a man who bore a striking resemblance to Raphael, but younger. His profile revealed that he was Raphael's younger brother. Suddenly, I was in a whirlwind on the brink of uncovering something, anything. I couldn't pinpoint what was driving me to identify the child's biological father. Perhaps I'm driven by the fear of him falling back into her care, and I can't take him in. Claire has already endured so much, and it's not fair to ask this of her. So I delved deeper into his profile, and everything seemed normal until, bam, guess what I stumbled upon in one of his photos? Cufflinks, the very same brand that she had stashed away all those years ago. The ones she lied about receiving as a gift and then passed on to me. It was him. I could see the resemblance in the eyes that mirrored Bryce's. I shot him a message, insisting we needed to meet. He was nearby and hurried over as soon as I mentioned it involved Enid. Upon his arrival, his first words were, "What has she done now?" It was as if he was accustomed to her stirring up trouble over the years. I can't say I'm surprised. Enid is like a tempest, leaving destruction in her wake. I laid out the entire story for him, from the beginning to the present. We spent hours discussing all the chaos she'd caused. He revealed that he and his brother had cut ties because of her. I was speechless hearing some of the things he shared. And then came the reason for his visit. Miraculously, I still had the cufflinks. For years, I'd been meaning to discard them. But once they were out of my sight, they slipped my mind. I presented him with the cufflinks and asked if they had been close. He confirmed it. Then I showed him a picture of Bryce, and he didn't deny it. He just nodded solemnly, as if he was coming to terms with it. By this point, I was emotionally drained, weary of the constant anger, betrayal, and sorrow associated with her. He expressed his gratitude for my honesty and then departed. As far as I'm aware, he managed to gain custody of Bryce, and we haven't heard from him since. I sincerely hope this is the final chapter in the Enid saga. I can't handle any more of her drama. Update. The narrative concludes. Enid's mom contacted me, stating that Enid was released today and wishes to see me. I won't go. I'm drained. I made the error of getting involved in her troubles because I wanted to rescue her from herself. Now, I have a wife and a child to care for. Enid is merely a part of my past. Her mom has some nerve. She was aware of what was happening all those years ago and allowed her daughter to disappear from my life. I persistently reached out to her mom initially until she herself blocked me. She didn't reveal Enid's whereabouts, leaving me in the dark. I don't care about what she's saying now. Enid is unraveling and facing the consequences of her actions. She needs to confront the aftermath of her deeds. I've already extended my forgiveness. This is my revenge.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? Is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. "Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. "Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized." Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. "All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason." "What? You're coming with me, right?" I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.